Not all blizzards come from the sky. Some fall only over one house. Welcome back to Night Creepypasta Rules, where every delivery comes with a warning and the frost doesn't just kill, it chooses. Tonight, we're heading to a town buried in snow and secrets, where a quiet courier job hides 3 rules etched in ice, and breaking them means the snow comes for you. You want to stay until the end? The twist will redefine the rules. If you've ever felt something watching you through a frosted window, leave a comment with the weirdest rule you'd never dare break. Subscribe for new horrors each week, the kind that makes silence feel too loud. The first rule they give you for driving deliveries out of Frosthaven, Alaska, isn't about watching for black ice hidden beneath fresh powder, or giving a wide berth to the moose that sometimes wandered onto the only plowed road in or out. No. The first rule, the one they stressed with a chilling lack of explanation, was about the snow. Specifically, the snow that falls on only one house. Frosthaven. The name itself felt like a warning, etched onto a weathered wooden sign half buried in the snowdrift at the edge of town. I'd driven for 2 days solid to get here, my battered pickup truck groaning in protest against the relentless cold, seeking the kind of anonymity only found at the edge of the world. I needed this job, this isolation, needed the vast, unforgiving landscape to swallow the man I used to be. The town itself was a scattering of buildings huddled together against the immense, snow-draped wilderness. Smoke curling from chimneys, like frail prayers against the sharp, blue sky. It was picturesque in a stark, slightly unnerving way. Too quiet. The air bit at my exposed skin with teeth when I finally parked outside the small building marked Frosthaven Courier and Dispatch. Pushing the door open, I stepped from the blinding white cold into an almost suffocating pine-scented warmth. Behind a cluttered counter, piled high with maps and manifests, sat a woman who looked carved from the Alaskan landscape itself. Sharp cheekbones, gray hair pulled back severely, eyes the color of a winter sky scrutinizing me over the rim of her glasses. Martha Thorne, my new boss. Noah Vance. Her voice was clipped, practical. No trace of welcome beyond acknowledging my existence. Figured you'd make it. Roads are clear enough. She gestured vaguely towards a stack of packages. Standard deliveries, groceries, mail, supplies for the outliers. Pays weekly, docked for damaged goods or missed drops. Truck needs to be reliable. Yours looks. She paused, her gaze flicking towards the window, where my rust-pocked truck sat steaming in the cold. Functional. She slid a laminated card across the counter, identical to the one described in the terse email exchange that had secured me the job. Her finger, thick and work-worn, tapped below the faded company logo. Right, the rules. You follow these. No exceptions. Don't ask why. Just do. My eyes scanned the 3 lines, the same stark capitals I'd already read. But seeing them here, under her clinical gaze in this remote outpost, made them feel colder, heavier. If snow falls only over one house, skip it. If wolves follow your route, don't speed up. If the lights inside flicker to your heartbeat, don't knock. A shiver traced its way down my spine, unrelated to the sub-zero temperatures outside. Unrelated to the sub-zero temperatures outside. I swallowed, forcing down the questions. I couldn't afford questions. I needed this job, this chance to disappear to the white noise of the wilderness. Understood, I managed, keeping my voice even. Marta gave a curt nod, already turning back to a crackling radio console. First run's loaded. Addresses are on the dash unit. Stick to the main routes today. Get the feel of it. My first delivery was just down the main street, to a small brightly lit store called the Northern Lights Cache. Stepping inside felt like entering another world. Warm, fragrant with coffee and baked goods. Shelves stocked with colorful local crafts alongside essential supplies. A young woman with bright, intelligent eyes and a welcoming smile looked up from behind the counter. "Hi, you must be the new driver," she said, her voice genuinely warm, a stark contrast to Martha's gruffness. I'm Sierra Bellwether. Welcome to Frosthaven. Cold enough for you? She laughed, a pleasant sound in the quiet store. Noah Vance. And yes, definitely cold, I replied, handing over the package, feeling an unaccustomed ease. We chatted for a moment. The roads, the surprisingly good coffee she offered me in a steaming mug, the sheer isolation of the place. She seemed entirely normal, grounded, a beacon of warmth in the encroaching chill. It was a relief I hadn't realized I'd needed. But leaving the cache, pulling back onto the snow-packed road, the weight of the rules and the vastness outside returned. The truck's engine strained against the cold, the tires crunching loudly in the otherwise profound silence. As I drove further out, houses became sparser, separated by miles of dark, imposing forest, the trees heavy with snow, standing like silent sentinels. The sun, already low in the sky this far north, painted the snowdrifts in hues of pink and bruised orange, beautiful but stark. It felt like driving on the surface of the moon. My last delivery was miles out, darkness closing in fast, the truck's headlights cutting a lonely tunnel through the black. The GPS indicated a cabin set back from the main track, down a barely plowed side road. Deep woods pressed close on either side, their silence absolute. And then I saw it. Just as the GPS announced I was approaching the turnoff, set deep amongst the pines, maybe a quarter-mile down the side track, a small cabin, dark, except for a single faint light in one window. Around it, impossibly, snow was falling. Thick, heavy flakes swirling down in a dense curtain, blanketing the roof, the yard, the trees immediately surrounding it. But only there, beyond that localized squall. The sky was perfectly clear, sharp stars beginning to prick the deep velvet overhead. No wind explained it, no cloud, just snow, falling relentlessly on one solitary house in the middle of the Alaskan wilderness. Rule 1 screamed in my mind. Skip it. My hands tightened on the wheel, a different kind of cold seeping into me now, colder than the Alaskan air. I didn't slow down. I didn't turn. I just kept driving, eyes fixed straight ahead, pretending I hadn't seen the impossible snow falling in the dark. Driving away from the house, under its private snowfall, felt like tearing myself away from a magnet. My eyes kept flicking to the rearview mirror, expecting to see that localized blizzard following me. But there was only the empty, snow-dusted track and the impenetrable blackness of the pines. The image, however, burned behind my eyelids, the sheer wrongness of it, the quiet defiance of natural law. It wasn't just strange. It felt intentional, like a stage deliberately set, and the road away from it seemed subtly longer, the familiar landmarks taking too much time to appear, as if the distance itself had stretched unnaturally around that spot. Back at dispatch the next morning, handing in my completed manifest, I tried to sound casual. Saw some weird weather out near the old Buckley cabin turnoff last night, Martha. Snow coming down heavy in just one spot. Martha Thorne didn't look up from her ledger, her pen scratching steadily. Temperature inversions, wind patterns off the peaks. Happens. Her voice was flat, dismissive, but her knuckles were white where she gripped the pen. A lie, poorly told, or perhaps desperately clung to. I didn't push it. Later, grabbing coffee at Sierra's cache, I overheard two old-timers by the wood stove muttering about the recent cold snap, their voices dropping low as they mentioned the white getting restless and hungry ground out past the ridge. They fell silent the moment they noticed me listening. The isolation gnawed. Days blurred into a cycle of driving, delivering, the brief warmth of Sierra's shop, and the long, dark hours alone in the truck or my small rented room above the garage. The wilderness pressed in, vast and silent, beautiful but utterly indifferent to my survival. One afternoon, A sudden whiteout blizzard descended while I was on a remote mountain pass. Snow swirled so thick, I couldn't see the hood of my own truck. I crawled along, blind, heart pounding, fighting the panic that threatened to make me hit the brakes and become another snowdrift statistic. Emerging minutes later into sudden, shocking sunshine, felt like surfacing from underwater, gasping for breath. The experience left me raw, hyper-aware of how quickly this landscape could kill. That night, the paranoia deepened. Was that flicker between the trees just snow falling off a branch, or something moving? Was the howl of the wind really just wind? Or did it carry whispers? I started checking my rearview mirror obsessively, which is why I saw them the instant they emerged. I was driving back from my last delivery, miles from town. The road a narrow ribbon cutting through endless forest. First, just 2 pinpricks of yellow light in the mirror. Far back. Headlights. No, too low, too bright. They gained steadily. Then 2 more pairs appeared alongside the first. Wolves. Loping out from the trees onto the road behind me. Their forms large and dark against the snow, falling into formation behind my truck. My blood turned to ice. 6 pairs of yellow eyes burned in my rearview mirror, keeping perfect pace with my truck. My foot twitched towards the accelerator, every nerve screaming to flee. But Martha's voice, flat and absolute, echoed in my head. If wolves follow your route, don't speed up. Rule 2. Sweat prickled my palms despite the sub-zero air blasting from the heater. I forced my foot to stay steady, maintaining an agonizingly slow 30 miles per hour on the deserted, snow-packed road. They didn't look like normal wolves. They were huge, shoulders powerfully muscled, coats thick like winter shadows, and their movement. It wasn't the wary trot of wild animals. It was smooth, deliberate, and escort. Their intelligent eyes never left my truck, tracking its movement with unnerving focus. Miles crawled by under their silent, burning scrutiny. The tension was unbearable, a physical pressure building in the cab. I remembered Jed Croft's cryptic words. Some things out here, they just want respect. Don't like being rushed. Was this what he meant? A test of nerve? The radio, usually silent static this far out, crackled suddenly. Not static, but a voice, distorted. Familiar yet wrong. It sounded vaguely like my sister, her voice stretched thin, whispering my name from a vast distance. Noah. Cold. So cold. Then it dissolved back into hiss. My heart hammered. Coincidence? Interference? Or something else learning, mimicking? A freezing draft snaked through the cab despite the heater blasting on high. My breath plumed in front of my face for a moment, impossible in the heated space. The cold wasn't outside anymore. It felt like it was trying to get in, after what felt like an eternity. Nearing the first lonely streetlights marking Frosthaven's outskirts, the wolves peeled off as silently as they had appeared, melting back into the dark trees one by one, leaving only their tracks in my thundering beard. Pulse of a hind. The next day, unnerved, I deliberately took a delivery route that passed Jed Croft's remote cabin again. I found him outside, splitting wood with practiced, economical swings despite his age, his eyes sharp and blue as glacial ice. Registered my approach without surprise. "They walking with you now?" he asked, not unkindly, leaning on his axe. I told him about the wolves, the radio voice, the cold spot. He listened patiently, nodding slowly. The stillness. "It watches," he said finally, his gaze distant, learns. "The wolves. Sometimes they watch for it. Sometimes they watch for it. Sometimes they are its eyes. Hard to tell." He fumbled inside his thick coat and pulled out a small, smooth piece of dark wood, intricately carved with a spiral pattern I couldn't quite decipher. "Keep this in your truck. Might help, might not. It respects iron and fire, and things older than memory. Don't show fear. but don't show disrespect either. Tricky path to walk. Feeling marginally better, armed with the cryptic advice and the strange charm, I stopped at Sierra's Cache for coffee. She greeted me with her usual bright smile, asking about my drive, seeming genuinely concerned when I vaguely mentioned treacherous conditions. "You be careful out there, Noah," she said, her hand briefly touching my arm. "This place, it takes care of its own, but it can be hard on newcomers." Her warmth felt real, a lifeline. I didn't mention the wolves or the radio. Who would believe me? That evening, Martha assigned me a new route, delivering medical supplies to a cluster of cabins even further up a winding mountain track than I'd been before. "Road's bad up there," she said, avoiding my eyes. "Take the heavy-duty chains, and Noah." She hesitated. A flicker of something. Warning? Pity in her expression. "Just stick to the rules?" "All of them." Hours later, deep in the mountains, darkness absolute around me, I found the address. A single cabin, porch light casting a weak yellow puddle on the snow. As I killed the engine, plunging the world into profound silence except for the wind's low moan, the porch light flickered. Then a light inside the front window joined it. Flicker, flicker, pause. Flicker, flicker, pause. My hand went to my chest. My heart was pounding, adrenaline flooding my system. The lights pulsed again, faster this time, a frantic energy, mirroring my own escalating fear. Thump. Yeah. Thump. Flicker. Perfectly, terrifyingly in sync. I sat frozen in the driver's seat, the truck's engine ticking as it cooled. The only sound besides the wind and the frantic pulsing of the lights, mirroring my own internal rhythm. It felt like a physical connection. A wire run directly from my chest to the cabin's electrical system. The light wasn't just flickering with my heartbeat. It felt like it was listening to it, feeding on it, acknowledging my fear with a ghastly intimacy. Rule 3, don't knock. Knocking felt like the last thing on earth I wanted to do. It felt like inviting that pulsing awareness right into my soul. The package, labeled urgent medical supplies, sat heavy on the passenger seat. My job was to deliver it, but every instinct screamed to put the truck in reverse and flee. Could I leave it on the steps? The porch was dark beyond the flickering light. The steps drifted with snow. What if someone inside was waiting, genuinely ill? Was this a test by the stillness, or just horrific coincidence? My breath hitched. I imagined lifting my hand to knock. Imagine the lights inside flaring in response. Imagine the door swinging open onto... what? Suffocating whiteness, pulsing darkness, something worse. I couldn't do it. Rule of 3 wasn't a suggestion. It felt like a biological imperative. With trembling hands, I grabbed the package, eased the truck door open as quietly as possible, and slipped out into the biting cold. Moving quickly, staying low, I scurried to the edge of the porch, placed the box down where it was just visible from the door, then retreated back to the truck as fast as I dared on the icy ground. I didn't look back until I was safely inside, engine roaring back to life, tires spitting snow as I reversed frantically back onto the main track. The lights in the house kept pulsing with my panicked heartbeat until I rounded a bend and it was lost to sight. The feeling of being watched, however, lingered for miles. The weather turned vicious on the way back. Snow drove down in blinding sheets, the wind buffeting the truck. Visibility dropped to 0. I was forced to pull over, engine idling, stranded miles from anywhere, the storm raging around me. Through the swirling snow, I could just make out the dark shape of trees lining the road, and faintly, unsettlingly familiar, I saw a localized thickening of the snowfall just ahead, obscuring the road further. like the private blizzard from my first night, drawn here by the storm, or by me, trapped between the storm and that. I felt a profound, chilling despair. When the storm finally eased enough to drive, I didn't head straight back to Frosthaven. I needed answers. I found Jedcroft's cabin again, smoke curling merrily from his chimney. He let me in without question, his eyes understanding my ragged state before I even spoke. "It's testing you," he said, pouring me a mug of steaming potent brew that wasn't coffee. "Sinsin' up. Wants to know you." He poked at his stove. "This town made a bargain long ago. When the cold was starving him out. Gave the Stillness consideration. To be left alone mostly. A bit of warmth, you see. Keeps it from creeping into town proper. But the bargain's old. Sometimes it needs reminding. Or maybe his eyes sharpened. Maybe someone's pointing it your way. Before I left, as I checked my truck, I found it. A thin wire leading to one of my headlights looked frayed, almost deliberately nicked, and the pressure in my rear tire felt suspiciously low. Sabotage? Or just the harsh conditions? The doubt festered, cold and ugly. Back in town, Sarah flagged me down as I drove past the cache, her face etched with concern. "Noah, heard you got caught in the storm. Are you okay? You look frozen." Her worry felt genuine, melting some of the icy suspicion Jed's words had planted. She insisted I come in for hot soup, fussing over me, asking careful questions about where I got stuck, if I saw anything unusual. Talking to her, feeling her warmth, I almost convinced myself the sabotage fears were just paranoia. Almost. Until my radio crackled later that night, back in my cold room. It wasn't Martha's usual dispatch call. It was Sarah's voice, tight with panic, breaking with static. Noah, thank God. Can you take her medicine up there? Please? You're the only one who can get through tonight. Willow Creek. The name sent a jolt of pure ice through my veins. That was the area Jed had warned me about, where the whispers said the stillness was strongest. A moment later, Martha's voice came over the official dispatch channel, flat, devoid of emotion. It somehow strained. Vance, confirming emergency medical delivery request to Willow Creek cabin, authorized by S. Bellwether. Proceed immediately. Something cold and heavy settled in my gut as I steered the truck towards Willow Creek. It wasn't just the dread coiling tighter with every mile, or the worsening blizzard that clawed at the windshield with icy talons. It was the feeling of being inexorably pulled, like a fish on a line, towards something ancient and patient, waiting in the dark. The road twisted in ways my memory insisted it shouldn't. Familiar landmarks seemed to have vanished into the swirling white, and the distance felt unnaturally stretched, each mile costing more fuel and time than it ought to. Then came the snow. Not the general blizzard, but that snow. Thick, silent flakes descending in a localized curtain ahead, swallowing the faint track leading towards the creek. And with the snow came the wolves, emerging from the white chaos on either side, more than I'd ever seen before, their yellow eyes burning with cold fire. They flanked me again, but this time there was no pretense of escort. Their movements were predatory, low-slung, teeth occasionally bared in silent snarls, lost to the wind's howl. Rule 2, don't speed up, felt like suicide, but flooring it felt like triggering an avalanche. I kept my speed agonizingly steady, hands strangling the wheel. The radio crackled, Sarah's voice cutting through, sharp with panic. "Noah, are you close? I hear noises outside. Please hurry." Then, beneath her panicked words, another layer of sound. A chorus of cold, dry whispers, seemingly speaking her words simultaneously, adding a terrifying resonance. "Hurry, hurry, it's cold." My blood froze. Was that her? Or it? Learning, mimicking, luring me onward. Through the suffocating snowfall, I finally saw it. Willow Creek cabin. A dark shape against the white, barely visible. But the light. God's the light. Not just the porch light, but every window blazed with that sickening pulse. Faster now. Frantic. A terrifying staccato synced perfectly with the jackhammer rhythm in my own chest. The cold here was different. Deeper. A penetrating void that seemed to leach the warmth directly from my bones. And Sarah was there, standing on the small, snow-drifted porch, waving frantically, her face pale, barely visible through the blizzard. "Noah! Thank God! Help me!" She's collapsed right inside the door. She screamed, her voice thin against the wind. The doors jammed. Every instinct screamed trap. The pulsing lights, the circling wolves, the impossible snow. Sarah's voice on the radio. But seeing her there, seemingly real, seemingly desperate. Could I condemn someone, even her aunt, based on fear and cryptic rules? Maybe this was just a terrible confluence of horrors. Jed's carved charm felt heavy in my pocket. I killed the engine, grabbed the medicine package, and pushed the door open into the freezing whirlwind. "Stay back," I yelled, fighting my way through the snow towards the porch towards her. "Let me check." As I struggled onto the porch, shaking snow from my eyes, Sarah's frantic expression vanished, utterly. It was like a mask dropping. Her eyes, which had seemed so warm in the cache, were now chillingly calm, almost luminous in the pulsing cabin light. She stepped deliberately in front of the door, blocking my path. It wasn't jammed. It was held shut from the inside by a thick wooden bar I could now see through the window beside it. "You shouldn't have come, Noah," she said, her voice quiet, reasonable, terrifyingly devoid of panic. "But now that you're here," she glanced at the package in my hand, "you can give that here. It's not medicine." "Sarah, what is this?" "Your aunt." "There's no aunt," she interrupted smoothly. "Not here. There's just the bargain. The stillness grows thin in the deep winter. It gets restless. It needs warmth, connection, life." Her gaze was steady, almost pitying. "Frosthaven survives because we provide it. My family, we help facilitate the offering when the signs align. An outsider's always best. Less messy." She nodded towards the swirling snow, the watching wolves. "It chose you, Noah, right from the start. You carry a certain resonance, a useful emptiness from whatever you ran from." My radio crackled on my belt. Martha's voice, rough with static and fear. "Noah, get out of. Sarah, damn you. Don't." The signal cut abruptly into a sharp hiss. Betrayal, cold and absolute, slammed into me harder than the wind. Sarah took a step closer. "Just go inside, Noah. It's quick. They say it doesn't even hurt. Just cold, then peace, stillness." "No," I choked out, backing away. Sarah sighed, a flicker of impatience crossing her face. "Don't make this difficult." As if on cue, the pulsing lights in the cabin flared violently, painfully bright, sending stabbing agony through my eyes, my skull. The snow around me seemed to thicken, swirling into suffocating drifts, grasping at my legs like icy hands. The wind howled, but now it carried distinct whispers, thousands of them, cold and ancient, promising oblivion. Tree branches overhead groaned, bending low, as if to block escape. I fumbled in my pocket, pulling out Jed's wooden charm. It felt unnaturally warm against my frozen fingers. As I held it up, the whispers faltered for a split second. The oppressive psychic pressure lessened almost imperceptibly. Sarah frowned. She lunged, not with frantic fear, but with calculated purpose, trying to grab the package, trying to shove me towards the door behind her. I reacted instinctively, shoving her back hard. She stumbled on the icy porch, crying out in surprise and anger. That was my chance. I turned and ran, plunging back into the blinding snow, heading for the truck. Behind me, Sarah screamed my name, fury mixing with the cold whispers. The wolves surged forward, blocking my path, snarling, but they seemed hesitant, confused by Sarah's failure, or by the charm I still clutched. The stillness itself reacted. The ground beneath the snow seemed to heave. The air grew so cold it felt like breathing shards of glass. The pulsing light from the cabin intensified, throwing the entire landscape into strobing, nightmarish relief. I could feel it trying to latch onto my heartbeat again, trying to overwhelm my senses. Scrabbling into the truck cab, I slammed the door, rammed the gear shift into reverse. The tires spun uselessly for a moment on the deepening snow, then caught. I wrenched the wheel, aiming back towards the track, anywhere away from that pulsing cabin. Zara appeared in my headlights, face contorted with rage, waving her arms, possibly shouting commands to the wolves, though I couldn't hear over the engine and the storm in my head. Then I saw it, a massive pine, burdened with snow, groaning under the unnatural pressure. An idea, desperate and insane, sparked. I yanked the wheel hard, flooring the accelerator. The truck slewed sideways, smashing into the base of the ancient tree with a deafening crunch of metal and splintering wood. The impact threw me forward against the steering wheel, stars exploding behind my eyes. But the tree, weakened, top-heavy, shuddered violently. With a sound like a dying giant's sigh, it began to fall. Directly towards the cabin porch where Sierra stood momentarily frozen in disbelief. I didn't wait to see it hit, kicking open the buckled driver's side door, ignoring the searing pain in my shoulder and the blood trickling into my eye. I half fell, half stumbled out of the wrecked truck and plunged into the white swirling chaos of the blizzard, the sound of the splintering wood, and Sierra's sudden, sharp scream echoing behind me. The pulsing light from the cabin abruptly winked out, plunging the immediate area into deeper darkness. But the terrifying cold presence of the stillness felt closer than ever, all around me in the suffocating snow. Blind instinct drove me through the blizzard, away from the wreckage, away from the cabin, and Sierra, and the chilling presence that felt like negative space in the world. Pain screamed from my shoulder. My head throbbed, and blood, freezing almost instantly, tracked lines down my face. The wind tore at me, snow blinding me, each step a monumental effort in the deepening drifts. I didn't know if Sarah was alive or dead, buried under the pine I'd brought down, or if the stillness had claimed her. I didn't care. All that mattered was putting distance between myself and that place. Hours later, or maybe minutes, time lost meaning in the white chaos. The storm's fury lessened slightly. Through gaps in the swirling snow, I saw it, a dark shape half buried in a drift, leaning precariously. An old trapper's cabin, long abandoned by the look of the sagging roof and boarded-up window. Shelter, hope, thin and desperate, flickered within me. Pushing through the warped door frame took the last of my strength. Inside, the air was frigid, thick with the smell of dust, old decay, and rodent droppings. But it was blessedly still, shielded from the wind's relentless assault. Snow had drifted through cracks in the walls, covering parts of the dirt floor. There was a primitive stone hearth, black with ancient soot, and a crumbling wooden bunk. Collapse felt imminent, but exhaustion won. I huddled on the floor, teeth chattering violently, trying to assess the damage. My arm was definitely broken or badly dislocated. My head felt swollen, and frostbite was already turning my fingers numb and white. Sierra's face swam before my eyes, the warm smile in the cache, the chilling calm on the porch. The betrayal felt like a separate wound, colder and deeper than any the cold or the crash had inflicted. How many others, how many newcomers had driven these roads, learned the rules too late, ended up as consideration for the town's twisted bargain? The horror wasn't just the entity. It was the calculated communal monstrosity hiding behind Frosthaven's picturesque facade. Shivering uncontrollably, my eyes scanned the dim interior, settling on the rough wooden wall near the hearth. Scratched into the wood, deep and deliberate, was a carving, a complex spiral radiating outwards, strikingly similar to the charm Jed had given me, which was now lost somewhere in the snow outside. Around the spiral were crude depictions. Wolves, heads bowed, facing a swirling, indistinct shape at the center, like a blizzard given form. Below it, scratched with what looked like a burnt stick, were words. It craves warmth. It hungers for connection. Stillness is the price. Not just hunger, then. Connection. The heartbeat lights, the mimicry. It wasn't just predation. It was a desperate, alien loneliness seeking to absorb life, warmth, memory into its infinite cold. The thought was somehow more terrifying than simple malice. As I stared at the words, a patch of frost suddenly bloomed on the rough wood beside the carving, spreading outwards in delicate, icy fractals. Despite the lack of any obvious draft, a cold spot formed around me, palpable, making my teeth ache. The wind outside seemed to whisper my name. Noah, a dry, sibilant sound that slithered through the cracks in the walls. Panic surged, but I was too weak to flee. I huddled deeper into myself, waiting for the end. But nothing else happened. The cold spot eventually faded. The whispers subsided back into the wind's howl. Was it watching, waiting, or had my desperate act at the cabin somehow satisfied it for now? Later, driven by a desperate need for warmth, I searched the cabin's debris, tucked away in a rotted crate miraculously preserved. I found a small bundle of dry tinder and a few gnarled, edible-looking roots I vaguely recognized from a survival guide. Placed there recently, or left by the cabin's last, long-dead occupant, near the door. Almost hidden in the snowdrift that had pushed inside was a single large paw print, too large for any normal wolf. Distinct as if deliberately left. A sign from Jed? A warning? Or something else? As the first weak, gray light of dawn filtered through the cracks, the storm finally breaking, I dragged myself to the doorway. The world outside was a pristine, brutal landscape of white. Far in the distance, almost invisible against the glare, I thought I saw the faint, hazy glow of Frosthaven's lights. But as I looked, a freezing breath, utterly devoid of moisture, ghosted across the back of my neck. I spun around. Nothing. Nothing! Only the empty, derelict cabin and the oppressive silence of the snow-choked wilderness. Survival became a numb routine. Setting snares with numb fingers, melting snow for water over pitiful fires, started with the found tinder, rationing the tough, earthy roots. My arm healed badly, a constant, aching reminder. The trek back towards the direction of the main road took days, perhaps weeks. The wilderness remained vast, indifferent, but the active, malevolent presence felt withdrawn, distant. The overwhelming psychic pressure was gone, replaced by a heavy, watchful quiet. Sometimes, I'd find those large, solitary wolf tracks paralleling my path for a time, always keeping their distance, before vanishing back into the trees. Guide? Observer? I never knew. I eventually reached a ridge overlooking the valley where Frosthaven nestled. Smoke rose from chimneys, tiny vehicles moved on the streets below. Down there was warmth, food, potential rescue. But standing there, looking down at the town that had tried to sacrifice me, feeling the phantom chill that never truly left my bones, I felt nothing but cold revulsion and a profound sense of alienation. I couldn't go back. Not to Frosthaven, not to the world I'd fled before. The stillness had touched me, looked into me. I was marked, changed. There was no place for me down there anymore. Time lost its sharp edges, seasons turned, marked by the thaw, the brief, frantic green of summer, the blaze of autumn color, and then the inevitable return of the cold, the snow, the white silence. I found Jed Croft's cabin, empty, swept clean by the wind, as if he'd simply dissolved back into the landscape. I took shelter there, living off the land, becoming a creature of the wilderness myself, thin, ragged, haunted. The locals, if they ever glimpsed me from afar, likely thought I was just another rumor, a ghost haunting the edges of their precarious existence. Early winter. The first heavy snow was falling again, blanketing the dark pines, muffling the world. From my vantage point near Yed's old cabin, I watched the familiar road leading into Frosthaven. A truck appeared, newer than mine had been, cleaner. It pulled up outside Martha Thorne's dispatch office. A young man climbed out, bundled against the cold, but with an unmistakable air of hopeful naivety as he looked around, perhaps seeing only the stark beauty, not the teeth hidden beneath it. I knew the rules. I knew the cycle. I saw the faint light flicker on and sear a bellwether's cache down the street. I felt the air grow colder, the silence deepen, pregnant with ancient hunger. The stillness was stirring, roused by the return of the deep cold, sensing the arrival of new warmth. I pulled the worn collar of my salvaged coat tighter around my neck, the carved wooden charm, Jed's, or one I'd made myself, resting against my skin. I was no longer the hunted. I was the watcher, a silent witness, bound to this place, forever part of the cold, unending stillness. Another ghost on the edge of the white. The snow fell harder, obscuring the town below, obscuring everything. The town still stands. The rules are still posted, and new drivers still arrive, unaware of the snow that falls only where it's not supposed to. Noah made it out. But the stillness, it never left. It just waits for the next route, the next driver, the next driver, the next heartbeat and sink. If this story got under your skin, drop a comment below. What would you have done at the flickering cabin? And if you're still breathing, still warm, still watching, subscribe to Night Creepypasta Rules, because next week, someone new will break the rules, and something old will answer.